This is Shred, and you're watching Why You Shouldn't Learn Music Theory. In a moment, I'll demonstrate a range of music theory topics, including harmonization, pedal point, scales, and chromaticism. The question is, do you really need to know music theory? We'll talk about the pros and cons of learning theory and whether or not it's right for you. So grab your axe and let's get to it. Now, before we get into some music theory examples, I just want to quickly talk about the pros and cons of learning music theory. Starting on the con side, it can make you less musical. A lot of times classical musicians are criticized for being too deep in their scores and not feeling the music. Secondly, music theory really isn't necessary, especially for metal musicians. Just look at James Hetfield or Dave Mustaine, who established incredible careers without knowing jack about music theory. Music theory can also make you less creative. When you're hyper concerned about following all of these rules, it's going to constrict your innovation. On that note, it can also prevent you from finding your own sound. Instead of spending time exploring your own unique approach to an instrument, you might get stuck just trying to duplicate what's correct. And finally, learning music theory can take a lot of time and energy. There's so much information out there, it's hard to know where to start. Now, on the pro side, music theory can be a shortcut to finding the sounds you like. When you develop your ears, you can listen to a song and then reuse that material in your own way quickly. Music theory can really help with your memory. I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten a song but then remembered the chord progression, and that brings the riff back. It also makes it easier to communicate with other musicians. Music theory is like a universal language. So if you roll into a studio and want to lay down some tracks for your friend, you can just put a lead sheet in front of you and boom, you're ready to go. Another pro to learning music theory is it can help you discover sounds that you wouldn't have otherwise discovered. Are you really going to stumble across box rules of counterpoint on your own? I doubt it. I think we get theory twisted all the time. It's really not a system of rules telling you what you can and can't do. It's more like a way to repeat the sounds that you like. Now let me know what your ideas are on this topic in the comments below. Now let's go through a few examples so you can decide for yourself, is it worth it to learn music theory? Now let's talk about how you can use box rules of counterpoint to vary your riffs. Got Randy Rhoads' epic Crazy Train riff, and here's the prime or original. Now here's the cool thing. Let's try flipping the direction of all the intervals using inversion. Try playing your riff backwards using the retrograde. Or how about backwards and upside down using retrograde inversion? Next, we'll take the classic Iron Maiden riff, the Trooper, and play around with modes. So the original here, we've got a fast tempo of 160, gallop patterns, and the chord progression is basically just E minor for a few bars, and then it goes to C. And this is going to put us squarely in the E Aeolian mode. But what if we want to change the mode? Let's try hearing the Trooper in Phrygian. Now to make the Trooper Phrygian, what you have to understand is that Phrygian is represented by the formula minor 1 to flat major 2. So what that means is you're going to want to bring out E minor chords and also F major chords. So instead of going to the C like we did before, we're going to go to this F. Of course, F stands for fuck. Now let's try another modal variation. This time we're doing the Trooper in E Lydian. So instead of a minor key, now we're in major, and the primary chords in E Lydian are E and F sharp major. So you see I've got the E going on here, and then when it normally goes to the C, we're going to F sharp. Next, we're going to talk about reharmonization. Now, this is one of the coolest topics in music theory because you can take a melody that everybody is used to hearing a certain way and flip it on its head. You're going to see I'm basically doing here is taking a chromatic bass line, right? It starts with A over here, and then we're going down to G sharp, then G, then F sharp, then F, then E flat or D sharp, down to D. So that's just pure chromaticism, but you can get away with that as long as you resolve the chords. Now let's say you really want to go off the deep end and construct some heinous sounds. So we use Arnold Schoenberg's idea of serialism or tone rows here. A tone row is simply all the chromatic notes in a row without any repeats. I think that's the greatest thing I've ever written. Now, I'm taking America the Beautiful, which is an American folk melody, and I'm putting this ridiculous tone row behind it just to create a sense of absolute unrestricted chaos. Now this is a super cool effect for metal, but you probably don't want to use it all the time. Otherwise you'll die alone and no one will love you. Now check it out, YouTube. I know there's a lot of information in this video, and actually it was a total bitch to make. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't worry about it. I'll leave a link to my Patreon page where I'll have the tabs for this video and where I keep the tabs for all my videos. I'm working on making my Patreon page the most badass metal course on the internet. So if you have any tips or pointers of what you'd like to see, let me know in the comments below. Pedal point is one of the coolest ideas in music theory. So here we're taking Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and reharmonizing it with substitutions, but there's always an E note in the bass no matter what. Now the concept behind using pedal point is every chord has this pedal note in it. And even though I'm using chords that are outside of the key, everything makes sense because of that common tone. Now let's talk about a super cool sound, Pandiatonicism. I took this right out of my music theory book, page 372. The effect is like this swirling texture of tonal clusters. Now next, let's check out some extreme chromaticism. also took this idea out of my theory book, chapter 27 on non-functional harmony. So you see, like, the key is C here, but I mean, we're just going all over the place. You got C and F, of course, those are in the same key, but then F sharp, completely out of the key, B, B flat, D, E flat, A. It's moving all over, but because of the lines and the voice leading, it works out. This is one of those effects that's extremely hard to achieve if you don't know music theory. Quartal harmony is when you use fourths instead of thirds to construct chords. One of my favorite video games of all time, Contra 3. Japanese female composer Miki Higashino wrote this music. Now you can see between each note there's a perfect fourth interval. F sharp to B, that's a perfect fourth, then B to E, that's another perfect fourth. Let's move over here. We got E up to A, that's a perfect fourth, then A to D. So all these chords are constructed with those perfect fourth intervals. This can be a way to find some new sounds. So there really aren't many downsides to learning music theory in the long term. I think it really comes down with whether or not you're satisfied with your ability to speak the language of music. Can you communicate the desired emotional content in your music to the listener with clarity? Do you feel free on your instrument or more restricted? There's really no right or wrong answers here. I think it's just a matter of taking inventory with where you're at and where you want to go with your music in the future. Until next time, shred till you're dead.